there, my name is Kelly Dale with Off the Beaded Path. Happy New Year. Thank you so much for joining me for a brand new video to start us off for 2022 with a new series that I'm going to be calling the Retro Redo videos. Now, this is going to be a thing that I'm going to do once a month, all 12 months of 2022. And basically what it's going to be is a project that's anywhere from 5 years old to 10 or 11 years old that either maybe I did not do a great job of explaining, I got tons of questions about after the video. There have been bead updates since the video as far as beads made or not made anymore. And just maybe videos of things that when I got done with the video and I watched the video, I was like, man, I really wish I would have told them this or told them that or whatever. So that is going to be the criteria for our retro redo videos. So now for those of you who are in our closed Facebook group, and I'll actually have Sammy put the little link up here if you are interested in joining our Facebook group. I've already given you a list, so you know what we're going to do pretty much for this entire year. But to start us out, we are going to go back to a video I did back in 2017 on the Triplicity earrings. Now, when I got done with this video, there were a lot of things that I wish I would have told you about maybe different brands of beads and the counts that you could have used for this project and things such as that. And I also got a lot of questions about tension. People really had a hard time with their tension for this project. So I thought I would address all of those. Another thing that I thought I would do when I do these retro redo videos, I'm also going to be revising the pattern and putting any impertinent information that I feel like you need to know. I'm going to put that in there. So with the revision of the pattern, when the pattern originally came out, the week before I had done a project called the Simplicity earrings. The Simplicity earrings was how to encase a SS39 Chaton. And so on the Triplicity earrings, I didn't think there was a reason to have to explain how to encase that. I don't know what I was thinking back in 2017, but I had those two as completely separate. So if you got the Triplicity earrings, you really didn't have a completed pattern. So one of the things that I'm revising on the pattern is both of those will be together now as one pattern. So if you were to get the Triplicity, you would have the complete pattern that you need. Again, I don't know what I was thinking back in 2017, but there's quite a few little fun things that I want to update you on the pattern. And so let's go ahead and let's get started with those updates. All right. So in the original video, the Simplicity earrings were a basic Chaton encasement for an SS39 stone. Well, one of the things that I did not do a great job of explaining was the difference between an SS39 Chaton and a Rivoli, or just a Chaton in general. So you will see here, this green, the emerald that I have my pointer on, is an SS39 Chaton. SS39 is simply the sizing that Preciosa uses to name the size of this stone. So I'm going to flip this stone over so you can see here. The stone itself has a point back just like a Rivoli would, but if you look at the stone itself, it has a deeper encasement here. So again, this is an SS39, which is an 8mm. The stone next to it here is an SS47, which is around approximately a 10mm. So if I hold these stones side by side, you can see here that the bigger the stone, the deeper the little point back is. But you can see there how deep the point on both of these stones are. Now you can also see on this much bigger stone the way that the facets are on a Chaton. So you can see here the way the light reflects that this here is a flat top. So it has a completely flat top. But then if you look along the sides here, you see the facets of the stone. All right, yeah, you can see how the light reflects there at all the different facets of the stone. So our Chatons have a flat top and facets here around the edges. Now I'm going to show you the Rivoli. All right, this is a 10 millimeter Preciosa Rivoli. All right, you can see here the back has foil on it, just like our Chatons do. But if I hold them side by side, you'll notice that the same size beads do not have the same thickness to them. A Chaton is much, much thicker, so that you can see how that looks there. Another difference that you'll see is that a Rivoli here has a point to the top. And then instead of having smaller facets, it has these nice long facets all the way around the stone itself. So whereas our Chaton has a flat top and then facets, our Rivoli has a point in the center and it has facets around the edges. So if you try to do the encasement that we are doing today for a Chaton, for the Rivoli encasement will not work, all right? This is a much deeper stone, and it just won't work exactly the same. So that is the difference between our Chatons and our Rivolis. Now we need to talk about the different types of beads that you can use for this encasement. In the original pattern, I did not give you a choice. You had to use Delicas, and you had to use size 15 seed beads. Now, one thing that I did do here on the original pattern was, if you look on the Simplicity earrings, I say that in the sample in the left above, this uses a Miyuki brand seed bead, while the right-hand sample uses a Toho brand seed bead. Now, one of the things I left out of the original pattern, I did not have this as saying size 15 seed bead. All right, so the sample here on the left uses a Miyuki Delica, that is my cylinder shaped beads here, and it uses a Miyuki size 15 seed bead. All right, the one here on the right uses a Miyuki Delica bead. All right, that's my cylinder shaped bead, but it uses Toho brand size 15 seed beads. So you'll notice here in this sample, I only had to use one row of size 15 seed beads. In this sample, you'll notice I had to use 2 rows of size 15 seed beads. So when using Miyuki Delica beads, if you use a size 15 Miyuki seed bead, you'll get by with 1 row. If you use a Toho seed bead, you're going to need those 2 rows. Now, one of the questions I got, or a lot, was you've used a Delica, but can you use a regular seed bead, a Toho seed bead, or a Toho treasure? You can use all of these beads for the encasement that I'm going to show you how to do today. The best, absolute best version of this is going to work out if you do a Miyuki Delica with a Miyuki size 15 seed bead. It's going to yield you beautiful results, with a really easy encasement. All right, it's going to be a really, really nice encasement. I wanted to do a little sample here to show you what it would look like if you did not use a Delica, but you used Miyuki seed beads. So you can definitely use a Miyuki seed bead if you do not have any Delicas. I've not finished off the back of it here because I wanted you to see what it would look like from the front if you used a regular seed bead versus a Delica bead. All right, this is what it's going to look like. Now, if I use a Miyuki seed bead, I will have to change the counts a little bit based on the Delicas, all right? And we will talk more about that in the pattern. The other seed bead was a Toho seed bead. And so I whipped one of these up really quickly here so that you could see what this encasement would look like with a Toho seed bead. Toho 11s, Toho 15s. This one is my Yuki 11s, my Yuki 15s, and this one is my Yuki Delica and my Yuki 15s. All right, so that'll give you an idea of what the three different brands are going to look like if you stitch them up following the directions. So let's talk about what we're going to need to make the Triplicity earrings. So we are going to need 6 8mm Chatons, and again, that's the SS39 size. 2 grams of the size 11. Now, I'm going to be using Delica beads because they're my favorite in this project, but you can use whatever brand bead you want here. 3 grams of a size 15 seed bead. I'm going to be using my Yuki. A pair of ear hooks. A size 12 or 13 needle. Either one of these are going to be your best buds. And 4 yards of thread. Now with your thread, you can use any thread that you would like. It does not matter. For my project today, I'm going to use my 1G thread. You can also use your fire line. You want to use a 6 or a 4 pound fire line. You can use your KO thread. You can use the new dragon thread. You can use whatever kind you would like. But again, for today's project, I'm going to be using the 1G. The only other thing I would highly suggest is a wooden dowel. Now, I actually have this explained in the basic Chaton encasement. This is the dowel, and it says that this is a 5/16 wooden dowel. This will allow me to work the first 2 rows of peyote and the first row of 15s. And it just gives you something to hold on to while you are trying to get your tension correct. Now, it doesn't come black. I painted it black. This is what the dowel will look like if you go to a store, like a Hobby, not a Hobby Lobby, but like a Lowe's or somewhere that sells dowels. This is what it will look like. So it'll kind of give you an idea there. And let me get my little tape measure out here so that you can see. I'm going to do this in for my friends who are in centimeters. I'm going to give you a little idea here of in centimeters what size this dowel is. And you can see here, if I wrap it all the way around, that's about what we are at. If we wrap this totally around, it doesn't mean it's 1 inch. But then here you can see the thickness of my dowel as well, or the width, I would say, of that dowel. So this is what I'm going to be using today just to work on. You do not have to have it. If you have like a Sharpie marker or you have a pen that you can work on or something like that, that will work as well. Okay, so the first thing I've done is I've threaded my needle with 24 inches of thread. And the instructions say to thread on 22 of my size 11 Delica beads. Well, I went ahead and I wanted to show you. I did a quick little thing here so you could see. 22 beads. If you put them on a needle, this is what the size 11 Delica will look like. If you do a Mayuki seed bead, you can see here that it comes out just a little past the Delicas. Or if you use a Toho seed bead, you can see that it comes out a good ways here past our Delica beads. So if I'm doing the pattern today, if I'm going to use a Delica bead, I'm going to do 22 Delica beads. If I'm going to use my Yuki seed beads, I'm going to use 20 to 22. If I'm a really tight stitcher, I'm going to use 22. If I'm a loose stitcher, I'm probably going to use the 20 beads, but either one of these counts will work for today. If I'm going to use a Toho seed bead, instead of using the 22 like I have here, I'm only going to use 20 of those beads. So that's going to give you an idea here of what you're going to need to do your encasement. So once I have the beads threaded on, no matter what brand I'm going to use, I'm going to bring these beads down and leave just a short tail. I only need enough tail to kind of hold on to as I work, so how much you leave is completely up to you. Here is my tail thread. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to come back up through the 22 beads again. This is going to form them into a ring of beads. Just like that. And I'm going to hold on to the tail thread as I pull this through. Just like that. So now I'm going to take and continue on through one more bead. This will be the first bead of those 22 beads here. So that when I pull that through, now my working thread is coming out of one side of the bead, and my tail thread here, my little short piece, is coming out the other side of the bead. This is where my little dowel is going to come in handy. And so no matter if you want to work, let me get it put on here. If I want to work in a downward motion, or I can flip it to where I am working in an upward motion. It doesn't matter. Completely whatever floats your boat, okay? But you'll see here, I'm coming out here of my bead. I'm not going to use anything for this tail thread except for just to hold my beads or hold this in place. I'm going to work a row of peyotes. So I'm going to pick up one Delica bead. I'm going to skip one Delica bead, and I'm going to go through the next Delica bead here on my circle. So if I pull this a little bit up closer for you so you can see there, I skip one and I go through one. Oh, you guys seen that? Hee hee. All right, again, I skip one and I go through one. Just like that. Now that looks better. Skip one, go through one. And so what happens, if I pull these thread tight, you'll see here that these two beads will stack on top of each other. And that's exactly what you want them to do. If you're a loose stitcher, you're going to see a little thread there. That's okay. I would just make sure to go in and pull that thread a little bit tighter. So now I'm picking up another Delica bead here. I skip a bead and I go through a bead. Now when I pull this, you'll see now that those beads stack on top of each other. And you see here, you don't see a lot of thread in between my beads, and that's exactly what you want. All right, so at this point, if you're seeing a lot of thread in between there, you'll definitely want to tighten up your tension. I pick up a Delica, I skip a Delica, and go through a Delica. And I'm going to continue around my little circle, picking up a Delica, skipping one, and going through one. Pick up one, skip one, go through one. Pick up one, skip one, go through one. And that's your mantra the whole way around. Pick up one, skip one, and go through one. And I'm going to do this until I come back to the beginning. You'll see here, I'm back to the beginning because my little tail thread is here. So to finish the row, I have to pick up a Delica, I skip a Delica, and I go through a Delica. Now, when you skip the bead and go through the next one, don't go up through this one. You need to finish the row by going through the one that your tail thread is coming out of. All right, this will complete the row. So I go through that bead and pull it through. And so now I have a complete row. To do my step up, this is where I'm going to go through the bead right above the one that my thread is exiting. So that's going to be the first bead that I put on this row. So you can see there which bead it is. So now If I just turn it like this, you'll see that everything is even and ready to go. So now this is where I'm going to be picking up my size 15 seed bead. So you can see it's smaller, and I'm going to pick it up, and I'm going to skip one and go through one, which simply means I'm skipping the lower bead and going through the one sticking up. Another way to say this is I'm just going through the next bead that's sticking up on this side of my little circle that I've made. And this row goes much faster because you already have all your little beads in place, and all you're doing is just filling in these little holes. So you can see how quickly that was, because now I'm back to the beginning. You see here I have one hole left open, and when I add my last 15, I don't want to make the mistake of going through the 15 up here. I have to finish the row by going through this last bead of the row, which is this one here. I have this space left. So I go through the bead here, the Delica bead, not the 15. So now I'm going to slide this off my dowel. And when I pull the thread tightly now, you can see that it kind of cupped inward, and that's what I want. If you want to, especially if you're one of my loosey-goosey stitcher friends, you may want to go through and go back through the 15 and the Delicas again around the edge here on this top row to kind of pull everything together. And again, I'm just going through the 15 and the Delica. I can normally get through 2 beads at one time. If not, just go through the 1 bead at a time. Whatever is most comfortable for you. And you can see I'm just going around the whole thing, just here on the top. This is not something that you have to do. It's just something that will help you, especially if you are a loose stitcher. Now, when I go through the last beads here on the row, you can really see now how that cupped inward. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the beadwork so that I can go through my beads kind of at a diagonal to come out of any of the, what we're going to call the up beads here on the back side of the piece. So any of the delicate beads that are sticking up, see how this one's elevated, this one's elevated. Those are the beads that I want to come out of. Okay. Now, this is the moment of truth. This is where we're going to put our chaton in, and we are going to lay our chaton face down. So when you set your chaton in place, this is what it will look like. Oh, that's going to be so pretty. And it should fit really, really nicely. Your size 11 delicate beads, the elevated row should just sit right there above the baseline of it and centered. If not, you know you've done a count wrong, or your tension is not tight enough, or if your stone just falls through, then you know your tension is too loose, and you may need to go back and do this again, or you reinforce again, or you may need to actually go in and add another row of 15s. All right, it's completely up to you. Whatever you do, make sure you do it on all 6 of these that you're going to need to complete to make the triplicity earrings. So we're going to do something similar to what we did on the back here. I'm going to pick up my size 15 seed bead, and I'm going to go through the next bead sticking up here along the back side of my piece. So you can see that bead kind of sticking up in place there. And so now I'm just going to work around the ring, picking up a 15 and going through the next bead sticking up. And you want to pull them tight so that they'll kind of, you see how when I pulled it tight, they kind of pull down on the stone. That's what we want. We want them to pull down on top of the stone. And like I said, I love this step because this is where the project gets pretty quick. Because you only have half the amount of beads to add. Okay, so I'm almost back around to the front, and I'm going to do my step up, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Not back to the front, back to the start. Sorry, guys. Don't want to confuse anybody here. Okay, so you can see here, my thread is coming out of this bead. I have this little space left here, so then I'm going to go through the next Delica, which is this one. Now, I can go through that one and do my step up at the same time if I can get my needle in there. And I go through 2 beads. So I go through the Delica and the 15. So see, I'm going through 2 beads there. And I'm going to pull this through so that now your piece should look something similar to this. Now, one thing that I would suggest for you, if that little tail thread is driving you crazy, go ahead and take another needle and then thread your needle onto this little short tail thread. Whoop. I'm going to thread it on, and I'm going to go through a few beads with my needle here, my new needle, before I trim off this thread. Okay, so this is not going to have a knot in it. We don't need a knot. We've gone through all these beads multiple times, so I'm not going to worry about a knot. I'm just going to take now and trim off that thread so that I am left with not having to deal with the tail thread anymore. And you can do that at any time. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work another row of 15s by just picking up a 15 and going through the next 15. And this will really pull the beads down to lay on the chaton. All right, so you can see here, I'm back around. I have to put in my last little 15. It's going to go right here in this little open area. So I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to go through this bead and this bead. So I'm going to go through the last bead of the row and then the next bead. So it does everything at one time. It does my step up. It does the whole shebang here. Sometimes you can't get through both at one time and you have to go through one at a time. It is what it is. There we go. All right, now we are going to do a version of square stitch. So I'm going to still only be using my size 15 seed beads. I'm going to pick up one bead. You can see here that my thread is exiting out of that one size 15 seed bead and it is coming out to my right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to come back through the same bead that I'm coming out of to make a circle. So I'm going to go through that bead from left to right. I'm going to pull this through, and now the new bead will kind of stack on top of the old bead, and I want to lay that down so it lays down just like this onto the back of the stone. You will see thread on each side of that. That is what square stitch is. No worries. So now I'm going to go through the next lower 15 and upper 15. So I go through the lower and the upper. This is the next 15 that's sticking up on the back side of my piece. Now I pick up one 15. I come around, my thread is coming out to the right. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go through that bead from left to right. So that way it will make a circle. I'm going to pull and set the bead up. You can see it sits right above the bead that I just went through, and I laid it down here so that it lays to the chaton. One thing you want to make sure is that it's laying straight up and down, so we don't want to see the holes, okay? The holes are going to be going this way. We want the bead to lay up and down. Sometimes when you pull it through, it doesn't want to do that. It wants to lay a different way, so you just kind of have to pop it into place. So I'm going to go through the next lower and upper 15. And I'm going to continue this, and I'm going to see if this bead does what I was just saying. So I pick it up. I go back through the bead here. Okay. No, that one didn't do it, but that popped to the outside. And so all you do is you just grab a hold of it, and you bring it here to the inside. So I'm going to continue putting one bead in square stitch over every bead that's sticking up here on this ladder outer row. As you can see, I've gone all the way around now, and I have a size 15 square stitched above every one of my little 15s that are sticking up on the previous row. So I have came out here of the last 15 that I finished the row with, and you can see if I pull it back, that's the last bead that I added. So I'm going to step up, and how I do my little step up is my thread is coming out to the right. So I'm going to go through the bead right above the one I'm coming out of. This is the last one that I added, and I'm going to go through that bead from right to left. So I'm going the opposite direction, and I'm going to put my finger on that and pull the thread. So now I am here on this top row. All I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all of the beads that I square stitched on this new row. And what this is going to do, this is going to pull all of the beads together here on the back side and protect the back side of my chaton. And you can go through these several times. You don't have to, but you can definitely go through them several times. Once you do this, you have your chaton encasement complete. Now, I've gone ahead, I leave the thread, and you can see here that I've gone ahead and encased 2 other colors of stones. So this one is a crystal AB, a peridot, and a emerald. I want them to be almost like an ombre effect. So I've done 3 encasements, and now what we're going to do is I'm going to teach you how to connect these together to make your earring or a small pendant. All right, so it says to thread a needle onto the tail thread of the component you want to be the bottom. So I want my emerald to be the bottom, and I want to make sure, the pattern says to make sure to stitch your thread so that it is exiting a single bead Delica row. So I like the picture because it kind of blows up what I want to show you. If you'll notice along the side of your piece on your Delicas, you have a row of 2 and then a single row, and then a row of 2 and a single row. So if I show you here on your piece, you can see here that I have a row of 2 Delicas and a single bead. A row of 2 Delicas and a single bead. So I want to come out of any of the single beads here along the edges. So that is going to take just stitching through the beads, and be careful at this point, because if you use, I don't know, number one, if you use a size 10, how you've gotten this far in the project without saying some nasty words under your breath. But number 2 is even with a size 12 needle, your beads are going to start to get tight at this point. So be very gentle, not to bust anything, and don't force anything through. You can see right there where my thread is coming out. It's coming out of a single bead Delica row. Now, number 3 on the Triplicity says to pick out which component you want to be the middle component of the earring. So for me, That's going to be my peridot color. With the thread, go through any single bead row on the second component. All right, so we're going through a single bead row. So right now my thread is coming out to the right. I'm going to pick up the bead I want for the second component, and I'm going to go through a single bead Delica row. So again, you see before it, I have my row of 2, a single row, my row of 2, a single row. So I'm going through one single Delica here. And I'm going to pull this thread. Now I'm not going to pull it tight together yet, because now it says skipping the space here on this, where this little 2 bead row is, go through the next single bead row. So right now this peridot is just going to hang out. If I bring this up here, you see here I am exiting here. I'm going to skip this little bit of space between these 2 beads, and then I'm going to go through the next single bead Delica row. So I'm just skipping this space and going through, so that when I pull this, number 1, you want to see the color on both sides. But number 2 is, you'll notice now what's happened basically is we have almost peyoteed these 2 components together so that now they fit nicely together. So what I'm going to do is, with this thread that I have here, I'm going to go back and I'm going to reinforce this connection and then get rid of this thread just like I did the tail thread, and then I will be done with this part of the connection. Okay, so I have threaded a needle onto the middle component here. And if I look directly above where I connected my beads at here, so if I come directly above it, you'll notice, and if I pull the thread here, that there is a 2 bead row exactly opposite where I connected. So you see here where I connected, there's a size 15. So if I come directly above it, it's going to be between the 15s. So it's a 2 bead row. So I want to come out of the single Delica bead before that 2 bead row. And then I'm going to take my first component, the one I want to be the top color of my earring. And again, I'm just going to pick a spot, and I'm going to look for a single bead Delica row. So remember, we've got our rows of 2 and our single row, our rows of 2. So I'm going to go through one of my single bead Delica rows here. I'm going to pull this thread. And again, before I pull it up high, or high and tight, I've got the bead here. I'm going to skip the space here of my 2 bead row, and then I'm going to go through the next single Delica bead. So that when I pull this, now this connects to this one. So what I'm going to do is exactly like I did down here. I'm going to reinforce this, and then I'm going to get rid of this middle thread, so that now I will only have the top thread to finish. We're down to the final step here. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I'm going to do exactly like I did when I connected these 2 together. I'm going to look exactly opposite where I connected. So it's going to be a 2 bead row here at the top, and I want to exit the single bead Delica row right before those 2 beads. Now this is where the pattern is going to change just a smidge. I'm going to pick up one size 11 Delica. I'm going to skip my space here, and then I'm going to come through the next single bead Delica. I'm going to pull this through, and you can see now that that popped one Delica bead here at the top. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch through my beads to come back out of the bead that I just added. So I'm coming out of that one bead. I'm going to pick up 6 size 15 seed beads. So 3 and 6. My thread is coming to the left. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go through that one bead going from right to left so that it will make me a little loop here. Now, if you wanted to, you could use a wire protector or a jump ring or whatever you want here. But I'm just going to use these 6 seed beads, and then I'm going to go through these beads again. You can actually go through them as many times as you can, number 1, get your thread through it, or number 2, as much thread as you have, whatever till your thread runs out. Whichever one comes first. But I normally go through it, I add it, and then I go through it twice more. So it's whatever floats your boat. And then once I'm happy with it, I will then take and stitch through the beads. I'm going to pop that there so you can see how nice that looks. Now I'm going to stitch through the beads and get rid of this tail thread so that I now have one completed earring. At this point, all I have to do is open up my new ear wire. So I just grab a hold with my flat nose pliers and I hold the ear wire and I twist this outward so that then I can slide the earring onto the ear wire. And then I grab a hold and I bring it back into the position that it was so that now I have my completed earring. So the great thing is, at this point, all you have to do is make your second earring or hang your piece as a pendant or whatever you want to do, and you've got your piece completed. So I hope you enjoyed learning this new retro redo project. If you purchased this pattern, if you have an account on my website and you've purchased this pattern within the last 1.5 to 2 years, you're in luck, because all you have to do is log into our website on the account, and on the orders page, just simply find the order that you placed for the Triplicity earrings, and you can download the pattern again with the new updated version that has all of these new things in it. If you've never seen the project before, then I'm so glad that you jumped on and you got to see it today. I do have the project pattern for sale on my website at offthebeadedpath beadstore.com, as well as 2 color kits. One is the green, like you've seen today, and one is a pink version that has pinks and reds in it. And it's absolutely gorgeous, especially with Valentine's Day coming up soon. I know we just got after past Christmas, but you know, just throwing it out there. So guys, I hope you have a great one. Please make sure to check out my website again at offthebeadedpath beadstore.com. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.